Alright, welcome back and thanks for tuning in to another episode of barSILENCE. My name is Jameson, and I'm your host. barSILENCE is a show that's dedicated to exploring the very best video game music each and every month. If you haven't yet, head over to barsilence.com to find an easy link to subscribe on whatever your favorite podcatcher is. And if you're looking for the best 24/7 video game music radio station on the planet, you should check out 8 Beats Radio. This show plays there live on the first Tuesday of every month, and you can tune in by going to 8beats.co. You can also listen to the show on TerraPlayer.com, where you can hear a great variety of video game music and gaming shows all on one site. In some exciting news, barSILENCE is now proudly part of the SuperPod network. Our show joins a lineup of truly exceptional podcasts coming together to bring you endless quality content on video game related topics, including the very best in retro nostalgia and gaming goodness. Check it out at superpodnetwork.com. In this episode, we're going to be taking it to the violent streets and listening to the legendary soundtracks to Streets of Rage and Streets of Rage 2 for the Sega Genesis. If you've listened to this show regularly, you've probably heard me mention the awesome music to both of these games before. You've also probably seen and heard the countless legions of fans online who sing the praises of these technically magnificent and sonically impressive soundtracks. So, to get things started, we're going to begin this episode with the 1991 Sega Genesis release of Streets of Rage. But let's rewind a bit though. The beat-em-up genre's origins actually started in the early 1980s with games like 1984's action arcade game called Kung Fu Master by Data East. This Hong Kong martial arts film-inspired game features a Kung Fu master as he fights through 5 levels to rescue his girlfriend from the crime boss known as Mr. X. It spawned a few similar games in the years following, but it was 1987's Double Dragon that truly ushered in the beginning of the golden age for this genre in the arcade, and especially later, when it arrived on the NES, where it rapidly became a co-op sensation at home. As the next generation of consoles took off in the early 90s, it was Capcom's 1989 arcade and Super Nintendo release of Final Fight that set the stage for Sega to create a game of their own that could compete with it. Enter Streets of Rage. The plot of this game centers on 3 former police officers who turn to vigilante justice to free their city from the grip of a menacing crime syndicate. This ruthless gang, led by the presumably different yet equally notorious Mr. X, has plunged the city into chaos. And it's up to our heroes, Adam Hunter, Axel Stone, and Blaze Fielding, to bravely navigate 7 levels, fighting through waves of enemies determined to stop them. Their ultimate goal is to confront Mr. X at the Syndicate's headquarters and bring an end to these Streets of Rage. Thanks to this game's story, impressive moveset, and the ability to play with friends, it provided a ton of replayability for Genesis gamers. But it wasn't just the gameplay that made this game a success though. One could argue that when paired with the absolutely killer soundtrack, Sega had an instant classic on their hands. The composer, Yuzo Koshiro, whether he intended to or not, managed to create a monolith in video game music, and crafted a masterpiece of not only one of the best soundtracks on the Genesis, but quite possibly the most technically impressive display of what could be done with this system. Around the time that Koshiro was tasked with creating this iconic soundtrack, he also experienced Los Angeles for the first time. That trip introduced him to the music trends that were taking America by storm, particularly hip-hop and early house music, which he saw frequently on MTV. His plan was to emulate the fusion of house, techno, and hip-hop style music by imitating the sounds of the popular Roland 808 and 909 drum machines with the synth sounds of the TB-303 by imitating them on an NEC PC-98 with the programming language that he created himself. which is seriously impressive. And with a bit of luck, Sega's managers ended up loving the demo and told them to proceed. So let's get into some of these amazing songs from the first game in the series. The moody and slow track that opened up this show is called The Street of Rage. It does an excellent job of immediately setting the tone for this game. And for those of you who are familiar with the group called Enigma, you might hear a little influence from their 1990 song called Satanist Part 1. To get things started in our first block, we're going to begin with the knockout track from the first stage called Fighting in the Street. This one is a certifiably awesome jam and is probably one of the most iconic songs on this soundtrack. There's also a hint of 2 tracks from 1989 in this one too. You get a touch of Soul to Soul's Get a Life and a dose of Pump Up the Jam by Technotronic as well. After that one, we're going to listen to the funky hip-hop-like beats of a track called Dilapidated Town, and then we'll listen to The Last Soul. I recently got to talk to friend of the show and VGM composer Chase Bethia about the music of Streets of Rage. We both share a love of Koshiro's work, and he reminded me of how excellent this song is with its low groove, twinkly synths, and excellent bass that all come together to perfectly express that you're heading into the lair of the big boss. So, thanks for the reminder to include this one, Chase. You should absolutely take a minute and head to Chase's website, chasebethia.com, and go to his Bandcamp to listen to some of his excellent music, like the synthy goodness of A Ground Zero and the chiptune beats of Deity Quest. We'll continue our Streets of Rage journey with the serious groove of a track called Moon Beach, which is a tasty sample of a rad 1990s summer jam, and I absolutely love it. After that, we'll hear Beatnik on the Ship and follow it with Keep the Groovin', which is another jam from this game that was definitely inspired by Koshiro's LA trip. This song's main beat takes a note from the song called Open Your Eyes by Black Box, which, if you know who Black Box is, then you probably know this is an underrated gem on that peak 1990 dance album. Then, finally, we'll wrap up this block with a boss battle song called Attack the Barbarian that taps into the 90s techno scene and is a prime example of how Koshiro masterfully simulated these types of genres with style. Alright, time to hit the streets and take Mr. X down. Enjoy these tunes, and I'll be back after that to talk about the sequel, Streets of Rage 2. In 1992, Sega released the sequel, Streets of Rage 2, for the Sega Genesis. It launched to critical acclaim and quickly became one of the best-selling games of the holiday season, even continuing its success well into 1993. The plot of this sequel takes place a year after the events of the game following the fall of Mr. X and his criminal syndicate. Or so our characters think. Darkness ends up returning to the city as a vengeful Mr. X and his thugs kidnap Adam in an attempt to lure Axel and Blaze into a trap. Our returning heroes from the original are joined by new team members Max Thunder, a professional wrestler, and Eddie Skate Hunter, who's Adam's younger brother. This new team then sets out to rescue their friend and finally put an end to the chaos once and for all. This sequel was developed by Ancient, which is a Japanese studio founded by Yuzo Koshiro, his mother Tomo, and his sister Ayano, who worked as the art, character, and graphic designer for the studio. Ayano worked closely with Yuzo to develop a new combat system, drawing direct inspiration from Street Fighter II, which had just been released a year earlier in 1991. This innovation resulted in unique special attacks for each character, delivering extra damage, but it came at the cost of the player's health. The rest of the team was focused on rewriting the game's engine, dedicating their efforts to creating smoothly animated, larger character sprites, implementing diagonal scrolling, and adding a ton of detail into the stages. So, while that was in process, Yuzo's work was centered around taking the soundtrack to the next level. For Streets of Rage 2, he builds on the groundbreaking house-inspired compositions of the original, and this time draws influences from progressive techno, breakbeats, and adds in a touch of electro-funk for good measure. Honestly, this whole soundtrack lives and breathes a nightclub vibe, which is a remarkable feat considering it was made with a custom-coded program on outdated tech for a system that wasn't exactly known for having the best music at the time. Yet, these very limitations pushed Yuzo to refine and enhance his composition methods, resulting in what is arguably the best soundtrack ever created for the Sega Genesis. It's worth mentioning that even Yuzo himself has said that the soundtracks to ActRaiser on the Super Nintendo and Streets of Rage 2 are his greatest works. And it's really hard to disagree. This game's soundtrack was also recognized as a major highlight in the gaming media world too. In a 1993 issue of the US gaming magazine called Electronic Games, they listed both Streets of Rage games as having some of the best video game music ever, claiming that Yuzo Koshiro was just about universally acknowledged as the most gifted composer currently working in the video game field. Which is high praise in an era where only a short time previously, composers were largely uncredited or given unserious names in staff roles. So let's celebrate this masterpiece on the Genesis and get into our final block of tunes for this episode. Up first, we're going to listen to the universally beloved track that comes from the first level in the game. Go Straight is likely one of the most club-ready songs in both of these soundtracks, and it's quite possibly my favorite song in all of these games. Interestingly, there's actually quite a few house tracks out there that have a very similar lead to Go Straight, including Do You Wanna Party by Bass Value that came out in 1992, as well as the 1989 track called Move Your Feet to the Rhythm and the Beat by Hit House that's an absolute thrasher. So you know Yuzo Koshiro was definitely bringing the heat on the house tip and tapping into that beat. After that track, we're going to keep it moving and listen to Ready Funk, which is another stinger of a track, and follow it with the sultry sounds and catchy bassline of In the Bar. Then, we're going to hear the song called Walking Bottom, which actually comes from an early prototype of the game that wasn't in the final. This song has some dissonant sounds weaving through it, but the jazzy vibe makes this one a toe tapper to say the least. Then, we'll hear another one of my favorite tracks from this game called Dreamer. I've always loved this song's singing lead and backing beat that makes you want to move. It's hard not to love this one. Then, we're going to follow it with a boss battle track called Never Return Alive, and back it up with the song called Wave 131. This track's luscious house vibes are another example of drawing inspiration from a black box song. The US Billboard Hot 100 hit, Everybody Everybody, is a poppin' house and Euro disco track that peaked at number 8 in 1990. And rightfully so, it's a great jam. After that, we're going to hear another killer tune called Under Logic. There's an awesome techno-pop song from 1991 by the group Shaman called Move Any Mountain. You can definitely hear the main lead similarity if you look it up, but I definitely prefer what Yuzo Koshiro did with this one. Then last, we'll wrap up this block with the experimental and hauntingly cool techno meets 90s hip-hop boss battle tune called Alien Power. Alright, time to save the city once again and listen to the knockdown and drag-out soundtrack to Streets of Rage 2. Enjoy these tunes, and I'll be back after that. Alright, so that's the show. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this episode about the legendarily great soundtracks to Streets of Rage and Streets of Rage 2 on the Sega Genesis. If you want to interact with the show and tell me what you think about my selections in this episode, you can follow me on a variety of social media platforms. That includes Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and Blue Sky. Following the show in those locations are exactly where you can find great screenshots, artwork, music clips, and various information about the games featured in each episode. Check the show notes to follow along on your favorite platform of choice. If you're enjoying this show's selection of incredibly great video game music each month, please consider taking a moment to leave a rating and review on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're listening to the show, because I'd really love to hear what you think. Don't forget, you can go to barSILENCE.com to listen to past shows if you've missed any, and of course, if you're feeling giving, you can always support barSILENCE on Patreon. For already subscribing, I want to thank the members of the Legion of VGM for supporting the show. Zoe, Alusa, and Cameron, I really appreciate you street tough heroes, and I really hope you've enjoyed this episode. If you want to join the gang and become a member of the Legion of VGM, you can subscribe for as little or as much as you want, and you'll get access to a bonus episode of awesome music each month. Be sure to check the show notes for a link to learn more. I would also like to thank friends of the show and Legion members Aaron of the excellent video game variety podcast Super Pod Saga, as well as Professor Tom of the Shujin Academy VGM Club. You can and should check out both of these shows wherever you get your podcasts, as well as on TerraPlayer. Alright, to wrap up the show, I've got one more song to play us out. We're going to listen to Good Ending from Streets of Rage 2. This song is the perfect way to take us off the streets and enjoy some non-found food after a tough day of beating up the ruffians and thugs of Mr. X. It has a great and cheery sound that, honestly, tastes a lot like victory. Anyway, enjoy this final song, and as always, thanks again for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.